Friday, December 8. One of the primary takeaways from the story of Paul's experience at the Areopagus is its on-the-ground study of how to approach an unreached group of believers, which resulted in a small group of believers starting in Athens. We read in Acts of the Apostles, page 240 and 241, the words of the apostle and the description of his attitude and surroundings as traced by the pen of inspiration were to be handed down to all coming generations, bearing witness of his unshaken confidence, his courage in loneliness and adversity, and the victory he gained for Christianity in the very heart of paganism. Paul's words contain a treasure of knowledge for the church. He was in a position where he might easily have said that which would have irritated his proud listeners and brought himself into difficulty. Had his oration been a direct attack upon their gods and the great men of the city, he would have been in danger of meeting the fate of Socrates. But, with a tact born of divine love, he carefully drew their minds away from heathen deities by revealing to them the true God, who was to them unknown. End of quote. By his direct contact with the people, a study of their culture and religion, and his respect for their devotion to spiritual things, Paul managed something notable in Athens, something that is a treasure of knowledge for the church. He avoided irritating his listeners. And it's interesting that in this day's reading, this is in italics. He avoided irritating his listeners. This was in and of itself a major God-inspired accomplishment. This, according to Ellen G. White, is the treasure of knowledge that we as a church need to pay attention to in this story. And that brings us to our 4 discussion questions for this week. 1. With the story of Paul in Athens as a model, what is the first step for anyone beginning new evangelistic work in a city? 2. What sort of behaviour is required of a Christian to build bridges with people in the city, and frankly anywhere else, who do not know God? And 3. When we are provoked by the modern types of idols, what should we avoid doing, especially right at first, in starting new work among the people who worship those idols? And 4. Paul could have stopped with just introducing the people to this God who loved them, and they would have been quite pleased. But then he crossed the line that made people think he was deluded when he brought in the resurrection. Should he have done that? Why? And why not?
Mission Path to Spain, Part 4 by Andrew McChesney. Louis Pavia decided to open a fruit stand in Spain, but he moved forward with fear, sensing that God was calling him to serve elsewhere. He also worried that his new business might prevent him from giving his all to God. 2 short weeks after opening the fruit stand, everything seemed to fall apart. His business was failing, his partners were cheating him, he fell ill and no longer could walk. But Louis didn't want to give up. He asked fellow Seventh-day Adventists for business advice. One of them, knowing that Louis had trained to be a pastor, reprimanded him. "You shouldn't be engaged in worldly business, but in the business of winning souls for the Lord," he said. For Louis, the rebuke was like hearing God's voice. But he felt even more hopeless. How could he serve as a pastor without a church? Louis talked over the matter with his wife, and they decided to return to their native country, Venezuela. Perhaps he could recover his health there. A short time later, Louis got a call from Gabriel Diaz, a leader of the Adventist Church in Spain. The church was looking for a missionary to work in Lugo, a city in northwestern Spain. Louis was delighted at the prospect of returning to full-time ministry, but he acknowledged that he had serious health and business problems. "I'm not even able to walk," he said. The church leader was not dissuaded, and the 2 men prayed together. In 2 weeks, Louis regained his ability to walk, and he opened a house church in Lugo. On the first Sabbath, only 2 people, both church members, showed up to worship. But in just 4 months, 22 people were gathering in the house church every Sabbath. Among them were 3 newly baptized members, and others preparing for baptism. In addition, Louis had opened a Bible study school and a school for evangelism to teach people how to win souls for God. He was making plans to plant an official church. We know that we have to win many souls in order for that to happen, he says. But I trust God and I have confidence in Him that this will happen because we are using Christ's method alone. Christ's method alone, according to Ellen White, will give true success in reaching the people. The Saviour mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he bade them, "Follow me." This is from Ministry of Healing, page 143. As a pastor in Venezuela and later a missionary in Mexico, Louis never dreamed he would be serving God in Spain. "I'm here because of God's grace," he said. Thank you for your Sabbath School mission offering that helps support missionaries around the world.
You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School lessons by Dr. Percy Harrold and the inside story by his niece Sibylla. Apart from being provided free to those who are visually impaired, these audio lessons are available on the official General Conference Sabbath School and Personal Ministry app, on SoundCloud, Apple iTunes, and also on YouTube. Search for Percy Harrold Sabbath to find all of these. And remembering all the time that God is always faithful.